we will discuss what is meant by the other term cardiac index. Then we will discuss the cardiac output curve. What are the physiological and pathological variations in cardiac output? What are the different factors that may affect cardiac output, and how we can measure cardiac output in humans? So these are the learning outcomes for today's session. So by the term cardiac output, we simply mean the amount of blood pumped by the heart in 1 minute. The amount of blood pumped by the heart in 1 minute. This is the definition, the simplest of all definitions. And in adult males, the average value of cardiac output is approximately 5,000 milliliters in 1 minute, or 5 liters in 1 minute. The value is slightly lower in females, around 4.5 to 4.6 liters per minute. The other term is cardiac index, very similar to cardiac output. If we measure cardiac output per meter square of the body surface area, we will call it as cardiac index. So cardiac output per meter square of surface area of the body. For example, if a healthy adult male of 70 kg weight having body surface area of 1.7 meter square, the cardiac index of that individual will be approximately equal to 3 liters per minute per meter square of body surface area. Remember the unit? The unit for cardiac output is liters per minute, whereas the unit for cardiac index is liters per minute per meter square of the body surface area. So if we measure the cardiac output per meter square of the body area, we will label it as cardiac index. And this is the normal value, 3 liters per minute per meter square of the body surface area. Now, what are the physiological variations in cardiac output? We will discuss the pathological changes later, but there are some physiological factors which may alter the cardiac output. Some of the factors may increase, others may decrease the cardiac output value or the cardiac index. For example, cardiac output in children is slightly less. That is why the cardiac index will be more because of the less body surface area. Similarly, in females, the body surface area is less. That is the reason the cardiac index will be greater in females. As far as cardiac output is concerned, there is diurnal variation in cardiac output. By diurnal variation, we mean cyclical changes during the day and night time. For example, during the early morning period, the cardiac output is slightly on the lower side, and it progressively increases as the day passes, and it all depends on the basal metabolic condition of that person. Environment changes do affect cardiac output to some degree. Moderate change in environment will not significantly affect the cardiac output. However, high environmental temperature change may increase the cardiac output. Similarly, there are some physiological factors that may increase the cardiac output. For example, during stress, anxiety, or excitement, the cardiac output is increased. During eating, during exercise, during pregnancy, all these physiological factors increase cardiac output. Similarly, at high altitude, cardiac output is increased due to hypoxia, due to release of epinephrine. Then posture change may also affect cardiac output. For example, sitting from lying down position or standing from lying down position may decrease the cardiac output due to pooling of blood in the lower limbs. So all these are physiological variations in cardiac output. These are not pathological, these are physiological variations. Now this table from Ganong depicts the same physiological variations in cardiac output. You can see increased cardiac output in anxiety, during eating, during exercise, during pregnancy. All these factors increase cardiac output. Similarly, sitting from lying position or standing from lying position slightly decreases the cardiac output. Any heart disease or arrhythmia, these are pathological ones. So we have discussed some of the important physiological variations in cardiac output. Now this graph on your left hand side indicates the changes in the cardiac index along with age. You can see as the cardiac, as we go on from 0 years to 10 years, you can see progressive or rapid increase in cardiac index. And after 10 years of age, the cardiac index starts declining from about 4, it comes back to 2 or 2.5 liters per minute per meter square. So the cardiac index progressively drops after 10 years of age. And this drop in cardiac index is due to decreased muscle mass with age. So skeletal muscle mass or body muscle mass is another factor which determines cardiac output. Not only the age, the muscle mass is important as well. And this increased muscle mass is responsible for greater cardiac output in males as compared to females. So we can also say that cardiac output is the sum of the total tissue blood flow. You can see the left hand side, the left heart, and the right side of the heart. The pumping side is the left side, the receiving end is the right side of the heart. You can see the left ventricle pumps blood into different organs of the body, brain, liver, kidneys, muscles, and the right side of the heart, the right atrium especially, is the receiving side where all the blood enters from the periphery. So the amount of blood pumped by the heart by the left side in 1 minute is cardiac output, that is 5 liters per minute. And out of this 5 liters, 27% is supplied to the liver and 22% is supplied to the kidneys, and 14% is supplied to the brain. 14% of what? 14% of this 5 liters cardiac output. So the amount of blood pumped by the heart is cardiac output in 1 minute. And the same 5 liters of blood will enter from the periphery to the right atrium, back to the right side of the heart. And this is known as the venous return. The amount of blood entering from the periphery into the right atrium is the venous return. And these two parameters, cardiac output and venous return, are directly proportional to each other. Greater the amount of blood entering the heart, greater will be the cardiac output, and vice versa. And this is known as the Frank Starling's law. We will discuss that later. First, we will discuss the factors that may affect cardiac output. The first and foremost, the primary factor which affects cardiac output is venous return. We have already discussed. So venous return and cardiac output are directly proportional to each other. Greater the venous return, greater will be the cardiac output, and vice versa. The next factor is contractility of cardiac muscle, or the force of contraction, and this depends on the cardiac muscle pumping ability. If the contractility is great, obviously the cardiac output will be great as well. The next factor is heart rate, another factor which is directly proportional to cardiac output. So these three factors, they are directly proportional to cardiac output: venous return, force of contraction of heart, and heart rate. All these three factors, they are directly proportional to cardiac output. This means if you increase any of these factors, you will increase the cardiac output. The last factor is very important, known as the total peripheral resistance, commonly denoted as TPR. Now, TPR is the resistance that the blood flow faces in the peripheral vessels. So, if you increase the resistance, you are obstructing the blood flow. Hence, the venous return will be compromised. And if venous return is compromised, the cardiac output will be decreased as well. So, this factor, peripheral resistance or total peripheral resistance, is inversely proportional to cardiac output. This means if you increase the TPR, cardiac output will decrease, and vice versa. So the first three factors are directly proportional to cardiac output, and TPR is inversely proportional to cardiac output. So if we discuss the factors affecting cardiac output, all the factors that affect venous return, they indirectly affect cardiac output as well. So we have to mention the factors that affect venous return as well. So if you get a question about factors affecting cardiac output, you have to mention the factors which affect venous return, because all these factors will eventually affect cardiac output as well. And the first factor that affects venous return is the respiratory pump. Now, what is respiratory pump? When you respire or inspire. So, what happens during inspiration? So, during inspiration, the diaphragm moves, the diaphragm lowers, and this will compress the abdominal structures. This will compress the abdominal veins, and compression of abdominal veins will increase the blood into the right atrium, will increase the venous return. Not only movement of diaphragm, but inspiration also causes movement of the thoracic cage, which causes the intrapleural pressure to become more negative. So this change in intrapleural pressure will further increase in venous return. So respiratory pump is one of the important factors that affect venous return. The other factor affecting venous return is the muscle pump. And we are referring to which muscle? The lower limb muscle, the soleus, the gastrocnemius muscle. The soleus muscle, mind you, is also known as the peripheral heart of the body, or the second heart of the body. Why we call it as the second heart? Because it pumps blood from the peripheral area into the right atrium. So on your right hand side, the lower limb muscle, the soleus muscle, is in relaxed form. So during relaxed form, the proximal valve is closed. However, the distal valve is open, but the proximal valve is closed. That is why the blood will not go into the heart. During muscle contraction, what happens? This proximal valve opens. Opening of this proximal valve will pump the blood from the lower limbs into the right atrium. And this is known as the muscle pump. So respiratory pump and muscle pump are two important factors that affect venous return. The third factor is gravity. Now gravity is inversely proportional to venous return because the blood entering the right atrium from the periphery is moving against the gravity. That is why this factor inversely affects venous return. Now, another factor is blood volume. Now, blood volume is directly proportional to venous return. Greater the blood volume in the body, obviously, the greater amount of blood will be carried into the right atrium, and vice versa. Now, venous pressure or the pressure gradient in the veins is another factor that determine venous return. You know, the pressure in the small venules is slightly higher than that in the large veins. Similarly, the pressure in the largest veins, the vena cava, is much lower than that of small venules. So this pressure gradient in the venous system is responsible for venous return. So the greater the gradient, the greater will be the venous return. Another important factor that determines or increases the venous return is the sympathetic tone of the blood vessels. So there is partial state of constriction due to the effect of sympathetic stimulation even at resting conditions, and this is known as the vasomotor tone, and sympathetic stimulation is responsible for this vasomotor tone, and this will increase the venous return. Now, right atrial pressure is very important factor. Now, this factor inversely affects venous return. By venous return, we mean the blood entering from the periphery into the right atrium. If you increase the pressure inside the right atrium, then the blood entering from the peripheral vessels will be on the lower side because the blood entering the right atria will face extreme pressure and this will compromise the venous return. So right atrial pressure is inversely proportional to venous return. Increase in this right atrial pressure will decrease the venous return. Another factor that inversely affects venous return is so another factor that directly affects venous return is the mean systemic filling pressure. Now this is commonly known as MSFP. So MSFP has direct relationship with venous return. By MSFP, we mean the pressure in the systemic arterial system if there is no blood flow, if the blood flow is stopped. So MSFP is directly proportional to venous return. Now, resistance to blood flow, again, if you increase the resistance, you are compromising the blood flow and you are compromising the venous return. Another inverse, another factor which inversely affects venous return is resistance to blood flow. Now, pumping action of the heart or the contractility of the heart is important. Greater the cardiac output, greater will be the venous return. So, if the pumping action of the heart is good, the venous return will also be good as well. Now, venous capacitance or venous compliance. I hope you know what is meant by the term capacitance or compliance. Compliance or capacitance is distensibility of vessels, change in volume per unit change in pressure of vessels. And sympathetic stimulation is responsible for decreasing the venous capacitance. So whenever you stimulate the vessels with sympathetic nerve fibers, this will cause decrease in venous capacitance. And decrease in venous capacitance will promote venous return. So another factor that affect venous return is compliance of veins. And if you increase the pressure inside the vena cava, obviously the blood flow will be compromised and this will compromise the venous return as well. So we have discussed the four factors that affect cardiac output. Heart rate directly affects cardiac output. Force of contraction of heart directly affects cardiac output, and venous return directly affects cardiac output. These three factors directly affects cardiac output, and peripheral resistance inversely affects. And all the factors that affect venous return will eventually affect cardiac output as well. So this is the summary. This is the flow chart form of the same factors. Respiratory pump is responsible for promoting venous return. The muscle pump is responsible for promoting venous return. Pressure gradient by sympathetic activity is responsible for increase in venous return. Increase in blood volume is responsible for promoting venous return, and all the factors that increase venous return will increase the cardiac output as well. So to summarize, the four main factors that affect cardiac output are: number one, venous return; number two, heart rate; number three, force of contraction of heart. These three factors directly affect cardiac output. And the fourth factor is total peripheral resistance, which inversely affect cardiac output. And all the factors that affect venous return will eventually affect cardiac output as well. So cardiac output may be calculated as stroke volume multiplied by heart rate. So the amount of blood pumped by the heart in 1 minute, this is cardiac output. This is equal to 5 liters per minute. Stroke volume is the amount of blood pumped by the heart in one beat. So you must differentiate between cardiac output and stroke volume. So volume of blood pumped by the heart in 1 minute is cardiac output, and the volume pumped by the heart in one beat is stroke volume. So stroke volume is around 70 milliliters. 70 milliliters, and heart rate is around 72. So if you multiply 70 milliliters with 72, this will give you 5 liters of cardiac output, 5000 milliliters or 5 liters. So stroke volume multiplied by heart rate is cardiac output. So both these two factors, stroke volume and heart rate, they directly affect cardiac output. Increase in either of these two factors will increase the cardiac output. Similarly, decrease in any of these two factors will decrease the cardiac output as well. So we can also calculate stroke volume by subtracting end diastolic volume, which is around 135 milliliters. So 135 milliliters is the end diastolic volume. So if we subtract end systolic volume, that is equal to around 65 ml. So 135 minus 65, this will give you 70 milliliters of stroke volume. So the formula for stroke volume is end diastolic volume minus end systolic volume. So amount of blood pumped by the heart per beat is the stroke volume, and the amount pumped by a heart per minute is cardiac output. So cardiac output is equal to stroke volume into heart rate. So all the factors that increase heart rate will increase the cardiac output, and all the factors that decrease heart rate will decrease the cardiac output. For example, excitement, exercise, thyroid hormones, all these factors, they increase the heart rate, and this will increase the cardiac output as well. Similarly, the factors that decrease the heart rate will lower the cardiac output as well. So stroke volume multiplied by heart rate. We have discussed the factors that affect heart rate. Now, what are the factors that affect stroke volume? One of the factors is the venous return itself. So there is a direct relationship between venous return and stroke volume. Venous return is the amount of blood entering into the right atrium. Greater the amount of blood entering the heart, greater the amount of blood pumped per beat. So direct relationship between venous return and stroke volume. So venous return increases stroke volume by increasing the strength of cardiac contraction. And the other factor that may increase the force of contractility is sympathetic stimulation by epinephrine or adrenaline. So if you stimulate the heart with epinephrine, this will promote cardiac contractility, and this will cause increase in the stroke volume as well. So remember, cardiac output is equal to cardiac output is equal to heart rate multiplied by stroke volume. So if there is increase in the heart rate, this will cause increase in the cardiac output as well. Similarly, if there is increase in the stroke volume, this will increase the cardiac output as well. So any of these two factors may affect cardiac output as well. Direct relationship is there between cardiac output and these two factors. So again, you can see the two most important factors that affect cardiac output are the heart rate and stroke volume. Direct relationship is there. Increase in heart rate will increase the cardiac output. Increase in stroke volume will increase the cardiac output as well. Now, we have discussed how stroke volume is increased by venous return. Intrinsic control is there, and extrinsic control is also there by sympathetic stimulation. So sympathetic stimulation will not only increase the stroke volume, but also increase the heart rate as well. Remember, sympathetic stimulation causes increase in both the heart rate and the stroke volume, hence the cardiac output will increase. Not only the cardiac output is increased, the force of contraction of heart is increased as well. The inhibitory factor is parasympathetic stimulation. This red line, this minus sign indicates that parasympathetic stimulation inhibits heart rate, and inhibition of heart rate will compromise the cardiac output as well. Now we will discuss what are the factors that cause hypereffective heart and hypoeffective heart. Any heart which has pumping ability above the normal heart is hypereffective, and below the heart pumping below the normal ability of heart is hypoeffective heart. So when there is an abnormal increase in the functioning of the heart, we will label it as hypereffective. Remember, this increase is pathological usually. Usually this is pathological, hypereffective or hypoeffective. And this will shift the cardiac output curve as well. We will discuss the cardiac output curve. All the factors that increase the cardiac output will shift the curve to the left. Similarly, all the factors that decrease the cardiac output will shift the cardiac output curve to the right. So two factors are there that cause hypereffective heart. nervous stimulation, and cardiac hypertrophy. So by nervous stimulation, there is excitation by sympathetic stimulation and parasympathetic inhibition. So the role of sympathetic stimulation is dominant, and due to this sympathetic stimulation, you will not only increase the heart rate, but you will increase the cardiac contractility as well. So sympathetic stimulation is important. Besides, cardiac hypertrophy will increase the pumping ability of the heart as well. So these two factors, sympathetic stimulation and cardiac hypertrophy, are responsible for abnormal increase in the functioning of the heart, and we call such heart as hypereffective heart. And hypereffective heart, the cardiac output is abnormally increased and the cardiac output curve is shifted to the left. Now this is the cardiac output curve. This is the normal cardiac output curve in green. You must understand the right atrial pressure is on the x-axis and the cardiac output in liters per minute on the y-axis. So for normal cardiac output of 5 liters per minute, the pressure inside the right atrium is around 0. So you can see at 5 liters per minute, the right atrial pressure is 0 millimeters of mercury. So if the curve is shifted to the leftward shift is hypereffective heart. If the curve is shifted to the right, this is hypoeffective heart. So in hypereffective heart, the cardiac output is increased. In hypoeffective heart, the cardiac output is decreased. And these are the conditions in which cardiac output is increased. One of them is vitamin B1 deficiency or beriberi. Similarly, arteriovenous communication or fistula is another condition in which cardiac output is increased. In hyperthyroidism, the metabolic rate is increased, so the cardiac output will be on the higher side as well. And in anemia, again, the cardiac output is increased. And in all these conditions, pathological conditions, the cardiac output is increased. Why? Because the TPR is reduced. And we have already discussed that there is an inverse relationship between total peripheral resistance and cardiac output. So in these conditions, since the TPR is reduced, hence the cardiac output is increased. We have discussed the factors that shift the cardiac output to the cardiac output curve to the left. Now we will discuss the factors that affect the cardiac output curve and shift this curve to the right. So rightward shift indicates hypoeffective heart. Remember that. Leftward shift is hypereffective heart. Right side shift is hypoeffective heart. By hypoeffective heart, we mean decrease in the cardiac output. And why there is decrease? If there is parasympathetic stimulation, obviously this will decrease the cardiac output. If you inhibit the sympathetic nerve, again the opposite of parasympathetic stimulation is sympathetic inhibition. This will again decrease the cardiac output. During heart attack or myocardial infarction, the cardiac output is reduced. During coronary artery blockage or inflammation of the myocardium, the cardiac output is reduced. Similarly, valvular heart disease, congenital heart disease, breathing against positive pressure, and in hypertension, in all these conditions, the cardiac output is compromised. And we will continue the list. If you open up the thoracic cage, you will change the intrapleural pressure, and this will compromise the cardiac output again. Similarly, if there is pericardial effusion and there is compression symptoms known as cardiac tamponade, the cardiac output will be compromised due to compression symptoms. Similarly, if there is any metabolic derangement such as cardiac hypoxia, again the cardiac output will decrease. Hemorrhage or severe blood loss will again decrease the venous return. Decrease in venous return will cause decrease in cardiac output as well. So these are the factors that decrease the cardiac output, right? So whenever there is decrease in the cardiac output, such functioning of the heart will be labeled as hypoeffective heart. And whenever there is hypoeffective heart, the cardiac output curve will shift to the right. So again, hypereffective heart, abnormal, increase in pumping ability. So in curve is shifted to the left side. Hypoeffective heart, decrease in cardiac output. So you can see in hypereffective heart, the cardiac output is increased. Here you can see, and the curve is shifted to the left side. In hypoeffective heart, the cardiac output is decreased and the curve is shifted to the right side. Now, how we can measure cardiac output? These are some methods by which we can measure cardiac output. Oxygen Fick method, the dye dilution method, echocardiography, ultrasonography, or electromagnetic flowmetry. We will discuss the two important methods, oxygen Fick and dye dilution method that are given in your textbook. So this is how electromagnetic flowmetry looks like. You can see flow is being measured in liters per minute. Here you can see during systole and diastole. The other method is oxygen Fick method. Now, how we can measure cardiac output by oxygen Fick method? So we all know that approximately 200 milliliters of oxygen is absorbed from the lungs into the pulmonary circulation in 1 minute. So you have to remember the amount of oxygen absorbed by the lungs into the pulmonary circulation is 200 milliliters in 1 minute. And the oxygen in the blood entering the right heart is around 160. And the oxygenated blood leaving the left heart is 200. So 200 minus 160 will give you a difference of 40 milliliters. So if you divide the amount of oxygen absorbed by the lungs, that is equal to 200, and you take the difference between the arterial end and the venous end. 200 minus 160. This will give you a difference of 40 milliliters. So what we are going to do is we will divide 200 milliliters with this arteriovenous oxygen difference. So 200 divided by 40. This will give you 5000 milliliters or 5 liters of blood. That is the normal value of cardiac output. So very simple method. You are going to divide the amount of oxygen absorbed by the lungs with the arteriovenous oxygen difference. This is known as the oxygen Fick principle. And the other method is the dye dilution method. Dye dilution method. And what happens in dye dilution method? We inject 5 milligram of dye injected into the antecubital vein. So this blood containing the dye antecubital vein here. Now this blood containing the dye will flow from the antecubital vein into the right side of the heart, from the right side of the heart to the left side, from the left side, and eventually into the systemic arteries. So we will trace the dye passing through the systemic arteries, and we will take samples from the brachial artery. So we have injected the dye in the antecubital vein, and we will take arterial samples from brachial artery here, and we will measure the concentration of that. So you can see, as there is rapid increase in the concentration of the dye, no increase for the first 3 seconds, no increase for first 3 seconds, and the peak is around 6 seconds. After 6 seconds, there is progressive decrease in the concentration of the dye, and we will extrapolate the curve, and we will apply this formula. The amount of dye injected is equal to 5 milligram, and we will multiply it with 60, and the average concentration is this 0.25. 0.25 is the average concentration of the dye. So we will multiply this 0.25 milligram per deciliter with the total duration of the curve, and this is around 12 seconds. So we will multiply it with 12, and this is the formula. We can apply this formula to measure the cardiac output in any individual. What we are doing is we are injecting a dye in the antecubital vein, and then we are taking arterial samples from the brachial artery, right? Now, if we have any question, please let me know. Ji Nadeem, 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 question answers. Yes, we are waiting for the question answer session.
सर हाई कार्डियक आउटपुट कंडीशंस बता दो.
Please tell your good name and then ask question. I request all students to please tell your names when you ask the question.
सर हीरा.
Okay, Hera, what's the question?
सर हाई कार्डियक आउटपुट कंडीशंस.
The normal cardiac output is around 5 liters per minute, right? So if the cardiac output is abnormally increased beyond 5 liter per minute, this will cause abnormal condition of the heart, and such heart will be labeled as hypereffective heart. So what happens in hypereffective heart? The cardiac output is abnormally increased. The pumping ability is abnormally increased. Why there is increase in the cardiac output? Because of this decrease in the total peripheral resistance. Remember, cardiac output is inversely proportional. Remember this formula. This is not a standard formula, but this is for the sake of understanding. There is an inverse relationship between cardiac output and TPR, total peripheral resistance. So whenever the resistance in the peripheral vessels is reduced, this will increase the cardiac output, and vice versa. So we have discussed these conditions in anemia, hyperthyroidism, vitamin B1 deficiency. In all these conditions, the peripheral resistance is reduced. So decrease in the TPR will increase the cardiac output, and increase in the cardiac output will shift the cardiac output curve to the left. Any other question?
सर इसका मतलब है कि जो कार्डियक आउटपुट है ये
Yes.
जो सिस्टलिक हमारा ब्लड प्रेशर है वो जितना कार्डियक आउटपुट ज्यादा होगा उतना सिस्टलिक ब्लड प्रेशर ज्यादा होगा। इसका मतलब
If
जिस तरह आप इनवर्सली प्रोपोर्शनल कह रहे हैं, जिसका मतलब टीपीआर अगर डायस्टोलिक जो है वो टीपीआर पे डिपेंड करता है, ठीक है, तो अगर डायस्टोलिक हमारा कम होगा तो हमारा सिस्टलिक ज्यादा होगा।
we haven't discussed arterial pressure today, systole or diastole, we are discussing cardiac output and the factors that affect cardiac output. We haven't discussed the arterial pressure factors.
सर उस केस में नहीं है।
Stroke volume will affect cardiac output. Cardiac output, the formula is stroke volume multiplied by heart rate. Stroke volume is the amount of blood pumped by the heart per beat, and the heart rate is 72 beats per minute. So if you multiply 72 with stroke volume 70, this will give you 5 liters of cardiac output. So stroke volume will affect cardiac output. Heart rate will affect cardiac output, not systolic pressure directly or diastolic pressure directly. The factors that affect cardiac output include heart rate, stroke volume, peripheral resistance, venous return. These are the factors. We will not go into the changes in the arterial pressure. Okay. All the factors that affect venous return will eventually affect cardiac output as well. Why? Because there is a direct relationship. All the factors that affect venous return will eventually affect cardiac output as well, because there is a direct relationship between the two factors. According to the Frank-Starling's law, if you increase the venous return, you are going to increase the cardiac output as well. Similarly, if you decrease the venous return, the cardiac output will be compromised. So if you get a question about the factors affecting cardiac output, all the factors that affect venous return will also affect the cardiac output as well. And these are the factors that affect venous return. We have discussed that already. Some of the factors directly affect the venous return, some of the factors inversely. For example, inverse relationship of right atrial pressure and venous return, inverse relationship of resistance and venous return. Similarly, inverse relationship between gravity and venous return. Then there are factors that directly affects, for example, blood volume, direct proportional to each other, right? So these are the factors that affect venous return as well. Any other question?
सर फिक्स प्रिंसिपल एक दफा बता दें।
Okay. This is very simple. It looks complicated, but it is very simple. All you are supposed to do is remember the values. And the most important value is the amount of oxygen used. So you have to memorize this value. So 200 milliliters of oxygen is absorbed by the lungs into the pulmonary circulation, right? So you will divide this 200 with the arteriovenous difference at the both sides of the heart. The oxygen concentration in the right side is 160. The oxygen concentration leaving the left side is 200. So you take the difference, that is 40, and you will divide it with 200, and this will give you 5 liters. Oxygen absorbed divided by the oxygen difference at the arteriovenous end. Yes, any other question?
Sir, what is the what is the relation between parasympathetic stimuli and heart rate?
Can you repeat the question? I can't hear you.
What is the relation between parasympathetic stimuli and heart rate?
Okay, remember one formula. Sympathetic stimulation usually increases all the cardiac activities. Parasympathetic stimulation usually suppresses all the cardiac activity. I repeat, sympathetic stimulation usually increases all the cardiac activities. Parasympathetic stimulation usually suppresses all the cardiac activities. So not only sympathetic stimulation will stimulate heart rate, it will stimulate the stroke volume, it will increase the cardiac output, it will increase the force of contraction of the heart. Similarly, parasympathetic stimulation will decrease all these parameters. Parasympathetic stimulation will decrease the heart rate, parasympathetic stimulation will decrease the force of contraction of the heart, decrease the stroke volume, decrease the cardiac output. Right? Next question. Yes, students, we still have 5 minutes. Please do not waste this opportunity. You can ask as many questions as you like. So there are different methods for measurement of cardiac output. We have discussed the oxygen fit method and diet dilution method in detail. We can sometimes use the echocardiography or ultrasonography for measurement of cardiac output as well. This graph indicates the blood flow. This pulsatile nature indicates the blood flow variation during systole and diastole, during the contraction phase and relaxation phase. So you can see progressive increase in the blood flow during the systole and decrease during the relaxation phase. So this is measured by using a handheld ultrasonic flow meter device, right? So very simple method, non-invasive method, just like ultrasonography. Are there any other questions?
सर फिगर 20.20 दोबारा बता दें उसमें जो ब्रेकियल आर्टरी का आप बता रहे थे वो रिपीट कर दें
Now this is the diet dilution method for measurement of cardiac output. The principle of diet dilution method is that we inject a dye into a vein and then we measure the blood sample by an artery. This is the principle. And the most common vein is the antecubital vein. So we inject a few milligrams of dye into the antecubital vein. Blood from this antecubital vein, the blood containing the dye, will pass into the right side of the heart, into the right atrium. From the right atrium, it will enter the left side of the heart, and eventually the blood containing the dye will be distributed throughout the systemic arterial system. And then after few seconds, we will take samples from the artery, usually the brachial artery, and we will determine the concentration of the dye in that sample. This is the principle. So we inject the dye into the vein, and then we measure the concentration of that dye by taking a sample from the artery, right? So you can see for few seconds there is no increase in the concentration of the dye. It takes some time. After 3 seconds, there is a rapid increase in the concentration of dye, and then this progressively starts dropping. And the first cycle is around 12 seconds. So we will apply this formula: milligram of dye injected, that is, we have applied 5 milligram, multiplied by 60, because 60 is for 60 seconds or 1 minute. And we will multiply the average concentration. You can see this rectangle showing 0.25 milligram per deciliter. Remember, 1 deciliter is equal to 100 milliliter. And we will multiply this by the total duration of the curve in seconds, that is 12 seconds. That's it. So this is the formula. So you must remember the principle of dye dilution or indicator dilution method. You are injecting the indicator or the dye into a vein, and then you are taking the arterial samples for measurement of that dye. And you will apply this formula to get the cardiac output. All right, students, that's the end of today's session. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.